Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter Show, powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show. Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And my name is Jo. Thank you very much for joining us here today, everybody. As you can see, we are not alone. So we are joined by someone very, very exciting. And today we're going to be talking about how you can get 100% of your clients' recruitment spend. I mean, who doesn't want to get involved in a bit of that? So, James, would you like to introduce our wonderful guest?
Yes, well, we're joined today by Matt Burton, and Matt is a veteran of the recruitment industry. And interestingly, Matt is also a Latin scholar from Oxford University. We don't get many of those with us, Jo.
No.
Why you'll know what you're why not, as a Latin scholar. Go on, Jo, what are you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, puella est in cana. There we go.
Very good.
Yes, that's it. That's the extent of my GCSE Latin, but you know.
I'm going to leave you to at that. But anyway, as a Latin scholar, it's obviously why Matt will know that being a veteran, it just means he's old. Which I can say with saying joining on that particular settee. Anyway, having said that, he's almost 3 decades in the industry, and now having exited private equity last year, he's decided to support small to medium-sized businesses in their ambitions to scale, which is what most people are sort of looking out for. Hopefully, it's why you're joining us today. But he is, by his own admission, a one-trick pony, with his expertise most obvious when it comes to helping recruitment businesses across all sectors and of all shapes and sizes take their clients on the journey from PSL to exclusive and long-term partnerships. So, Matt, welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lovely to be here.
Good. Jo, what are we talking about today?
So, these are some brilliant topics. How you can get 100% of your clients' recruitment spend. So we're going to be talking about how you can do that. We're going to be talking about why you should be focusing on maximising opportunities with existing clients instead of just chasing new business, which I think is going to be a really popular topic. Secondly, we're then going to talk about increasing your vacancy fill rates to 100%. Yes, it is possible. Then we're going to talk about shifting from RPO to RPP and what all this means, and busting some of this jargon and misconceptions, I think, that are out there in the industry. And then following on, we're going to talk about how to win multi-vacancy exclusive contracts if you are a small to medium-sized recruitment firm. So you don't have to be one of the big boys in order to do it. So some great topics there, I think, for today. And we've got 45 minutes, so a nice amount of time to do it in.
Good. And I just wonder with
simple.
Just simple. Just Matt, just tell us all that.
Yeah.
I just wonder, what we've done is we've obviously put the rose between two thorns, but I just wonder if behind the scenes we could make Matt the centre of attention. Any chance we can just wiggle him into the middle? How can you do that behind the background? Anyway, Matt, whilst that might be happening, although I've briefly summarised your career in a couple of sentences, would you care to elaborate on your career and importantly bring us up to speed on what you've done to generate high-value contracts rather than spot business? Because that's what the focus is for today.
Yeah, so I'm, as you say, a veteran now, James. I think with 29 years, in fact, it is 29 years, because the last 2 weeks I've met a couple of people I started my career with, just completely out of the blue. But going back to my pre-recruitment career, was straight out of university. As you say, it was Oxford. I maintain to this day I'm still the lowest paid Oxford graduate in history. Came back up north. Everybody else went to the city and did big London jobs, fund management jobs, investment banking. I decided to come back up north as a Liverpool fan and decided I had to get into either, for some reason, estate agency, car sales, or the nearest one being recruitment, as was back then. Spent probably, I think it's about 5 years in a growing sort of scaling accountancy recruitment firm in the Northwest. A lot of people on this call might remember the days of 100 calls a day. So literally 100 times a day going, do you have a job? Do you have a job? And I recall the frightening moments in week 2 where a client turned around and said, yes, I've got 2 credit controller roles. And I absolutely lost it. I hadn't been trained on it, didn't know what to say next. As it turns out, that client ended up being one of my biggest clients ever. So that was my first example of taking a business on a journey from not even knowing what to say after they've got a job to being an exclusive partner to them. Anyway, cut a long story short, spent 5 years there, 4 years then in corporate recruitment. Just didn't like that, had enough of it, don't like being unproductive. And my view of the recruitment industry, rightly or wrongly, is that you are typically 80% not productive. And I just can't get my head around that. So decided to set up on my own. And the only way I could be 100% productive to have one client. And that's what I did. So one client, started off giving them consultancy support, then hiring their senior roles, literally everything from a Saturday worker in a branch of their insurance company down in southeast London, all the way through to the CFO. I placed about 2,000 people in that business over a 4-year period. And that was the start of my journey towards basically being, as people would like to batch me, an RPO specialist. But I, as you'll realise, don't like the phraseology of RPO.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we'll come back to that. One of the interesting points you mentioned, and for people listening, I'd like them just to, self-analyze something that you just said there, because you said that 80% of the role or the work of a recruiter is unproductive. And it's something we totally agree with here at iIntro as well. It's something that we value. And sometimes you get recruiters who will sort of like poo-poo that one and say, well, no, that's not my case. And all we'd ask myself analysis is just to ask yourself this question. How many vacancies do you work on in a period of time, be it a month, a half year, a year, and how many invoices do you raise? I remember doing that exercise myself. I'm going about 12, 13 years, asking a group of our UK recruiters at the time that very same question. And of course, you had the people in the audience, your team, my team at that stage, saying, 1 in 2, 1 in 3. One brave soul said 1 in 5, the old 80-20 Pareto law. I said, well, that's very interesting because, I've just reviewed our CRM for the past year and actually asked that are actually 1 in 10. I'm not proud of that. I'm trying to enlighten you the fact that the reality is we sometimes delude ourselves that we're more productive than we actually are. We may be.
I also think it depends on where people draw the line. So for me, activity and an active job is the minute you take a briefing, not halfway through the process and you just got unlucky because somebody else got the job instead of your candidate. And when I talk about productivity, I'm talking about every minute of every day being an opportunity to do something really productive. And I stand by that it's a minimum of 80% non-productive.
Yeah. Well, we're all ears on that one. Anyway, so I butted in there because you just said something that just piqued my interest, and I just want to sort of make people aware.
Oh, I finished talking about myself. I finished talking about myself, mate. You could. So where I am now is, as you say, I support businesses on the one area that I thoroughly enjoy, which is how to make client relationships sticky, valuable, and worthwhile.
Cool. Okay. Well, Joe, I'm sure Joe will have a question. By the way, if you want to get a hold of Matt, then obviously there's his website there, so you can look him up, and obviously look him up on LinkedIn as well. But Joe, what's our first question? Yeah, you had a good question.
Absolutely. And if anyone else has any questions, if you're watching us today, then please do pop them in the comments. We can see them as they come in, so we can ask Matt as we're going through. So you spoke there about the journey from, which again I think is an intrinsic problem with recruitment, is trying to get jobs without ever being given the knowledge of then understanding what to do with them and the full, sort of the recruitment cycle, the knowledge of that, but all the way through to then having that as your, one exclusive client that you were working with. And I know that there'll be a lot of people listening here who do have this inconsistent business with multiple companies. And I'm pretty sure that all of us would, the panacea is to have all of the business, or all the business that you'd want to have from within one organization. So when we're developing close long-term relationships with clients, what are the key drivers, do you think, to ensure that you transition from being the sole supplier of recruitment, i.e. to being able to get 100% of that recruitment spend? Because it doesn't happen overnight, does it?
Oh, no. I think that's the first critical point is you can't just wave a magic wand. I sometimes consider it from a personal perspective a little bit like a relationship. So a personal relationship, you don't have a long-term partner or spouse by deciding you want one partner who loves sport and wants to go running, another partner who will be the person who absolutely loves going out for really nice meals or the cinema. You don't mix and match. There should be, I think there needs to be a recalibration, which is recruiters seeing that their job isn't just about the delivery of a piece of human capital, a person. It's not about a CV. It's actually about a total talent solution. Once you establish that as a recalibrated aspiration, it becomes really easy to work out how do I need to get there? And then the reality hits, and certainly hit me early doors. It's very much focused around what is the client wanting? Because trust me, no client wants to deal with 5 to 10 recruiters.
Yeah.
No client wants to deal with the bum who's send the CV at the right time. No client wants to have 5 to 10 different invoicing processes and stuff. They just don't want it. But I think it's too easy to just stay in the left-hand lane where we've been for certainly 30 years. I can see as minimum, which is it's the way it's always done. Well, it's not, and it is evolving. So key driver, as I see it, is one, understanding that the client probably wants it. Two, realizing that actually it takes you from being just a transactional supplier to a genuine talent partner. And then understanding that makes you also realize that actually what we do isn't just about searching for a candidate and sending a CV and making a placement. There's so many more things that go into a total talent solution nowadays. So they're the key steps, because actually what this boils down to in the end is what's not to like for a client. They get a long relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that something just sorry to interrupt. The argument, Matt, is very logical. Because you explain to a client, why would you want to have 5 or 10 suppliers of, recruitment, invoice processing, etc., etc. So why does it allow, where can you break that cycle? Because obviously companies just carry on and on and on doing this. So what was there any moment or a breakthrough for you that said, where you had a client, who had that eureka moment, said, "You're right, Matt."
So this was, I'll just go back, if you don't mind, 20 years, and obviously my mind has evolved a fair bit since then in terms of the nuances of how you position this. But it was that client, the insurance company, turned around to me and said, "Matt, do you know anybody who can?" Because at the time I was just doing senior jobs for them. "Do you know anybody who can fill 500 call center insurance office staff a year?" I said, "Yeah, me." And the answer back was, "Don't be ridiculous. You only placed, C-suite." I said, "No, I mean, I'm job agnostic. I could not care less. I want to work with you." And it took a little bit of time for them to agree to it. But the principal turning point for them, that eureka moment, was actually you care. Yeah. So recruitment as a process, recruitment's not difficult. Yeah. I do not think we're in a difficult industry. The most difficult part of it is having the client trust that you are somebody they can entrust their talent agenda to. You get that step right, then it's easy to deliver. A key step in that journey, though, is you've got to understand the proposition you're offering. And I think this is where recruiters typically, and I include myself early days in this, is that you see yourself in a fight. You see yourself in you've got to be pacey. You see yourself living in a world of databases. You see yourself living in a world where the client might change their mind at the last minute. They do, but they don't when you've got a relationship, because they're positioned in such a way as they will see you as somebody to challenge them, somebody who they can share concerns with, and that makes recruitment so much easier.
Yeah, I do. Do you know? I agree with you 100%. I really do. I was having this exact conversation with a business this morning, because they are now losing out on fees. They're losing out on clients. They're losing out on placements due to sort of direct candidates and internal candidates and all these pressures, all these forces that are sort of squeezing their profit margins and squeezing their client lists. And to a certain degree, I did sort of say it's kind of our own making that. Yeah. So when clients think they can do the job without you, either A, you're making it look easy, or B, you're not making it look like you're doing much. And neither of those two things are built out of transparency and honesty, are they?
No, they're not. And that's a really good point, actually, because I think you've summarized what I would say more verbosely, which is it's not the job. Sending the CVs, getting the placement, for me, isn't the job of a professional recruiter. The job of a professional recruiter is to have an intimate relationship with their client, to have their business strategy at the heart of a talent strategy, to consider the importance of what's happening next? When I look at some of the work I've done with my clients in the past, as an RPO provider, I'm thinking what's happening to them in 12 months' time? What are the things that are going to impact their talent pool at that point? What are the things they need to consider when it comes to their own value proposition and brand to be competitive, to be a destination of choice? That's the job nowadays for Total Talent Solutions, in my opinion, not getting a job, finding a candidate, sending a CV and filling us.
Yeah.
Well, you started off there, excuse me, talking about years and years ago. That first, would you say it was a credit controller job that then moved into?
It was a yes,
Was it credit controller? Well, whichever role it was. It was a junior role.
Yeah.
And you then developed, but you also said it was interesting is that took 4 years. Yeah, so it's a long year from your own point of view.
Yeah, it didn't take 4 years to have everything, but it became a 4-year relationship because I then left. I'm going to give you an example of one that might be even better than that. So I won't say who it is, but let's just say major high street retail bank. And I'd worked with them for a number of years in the corporate recruitment space. Decided I wanted to support them on a shared service centre they were setting up. So went to Salford to have a look at the various locations. Had dinner with the various PR people around how we're going to get the brand out there for what they're doing. I literally became part of their team without getting a penny from them. I spent 9 months supporting this bank rollout, one meeting a week for an hour to go through the implementation plan that was huge. Kept my mouth shut for 9 months. Now, I did all that because actually, that 9 months of work, whilst it didn't deliver a single penny, I knew it was going to give me a 7-year relationship, placing over 5,000 people into that business. I know I'm not suggesting people work for free, but if you see the bigger picture, which is I'm going to demonstrate that I'm a valued partner and somebody that actually strategically gets what you're doing and why, you become more than a recruiter at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You become a trusted advisor or a recruitment partner, as you would have one of those. You'd have those in all aspects of business. You have people who are specialists who. So we'd sort of talk about a lot about this when we talk about identity shift at the beginning of the process. So your value proposition is kind of born out of your identity, or what do you see yourself as doing? What benefits do you think you bring? What problems do you solve? And a big thing of that is people will literally go away, James, won't they? And they will change their job titles. So it's almost like they're shifting their identity away from I'm a recruiter, which could be that sort of transactional side of things, arm's length with the client. They won't let me in. I'm just, providing CVs, more into a management consultant, an actual professional consultant who specializes in talent. Which is
and that's sorry. Well, I was going to say as well on that, and I don't blame recruiters for this, by the way, because actually, consultants they do what they can within the ecosystem they operate. Now, the way I look at it is that a recruiter isn't a recruiter 100% of the time. 20% of the time, they're a business development person. 15-20% of the time, they're an invoice chaser. 20% of the time, they're trying to get their head around the 10 different texts that are being brought in at any one time. They're doing bits of everything. And actually, if the beauty of having this kind of mentality around exclusive client relationships, it allows you to structure your resourcing of that client relationship in a much more structured way. So your best resourcer is resourcing 100% of the time. Your best marketeer, in terms of traction, acquisition, EVP, they're doing that 100% of the time. And this is why it's so valuable for me over the years to literally have been laser focused on. I'm only going to work with clients that want to work with me in every way.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look back on some of those successes where you've won these contracts, what is it what did you identify? Was it a client who was working with you and said, okay, let me see how I can develop this one? Or was there some other moment that said, actually, there's something a bit more here? Or do you just say, well, I want to go and chase these big contracts, so I've got to go and chase big employers? Did you, where did the germ of the idea come from?
I don't think in 25 years I've won a single tender for this type of work, excluding retenders. This is part of when you think about the scale of an RPO, whatever we call it. There's an expectation as well. I've got to go through procurement loops, got to do this, got to do that. So what I have done in the past is spot which clients are in need of a full service, not an RPO, but a full managed service, a full, transparent and strategic relationship. Then it's a case of let me prove that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And that's what happened with this big bank is I filled one job in Oxford, as it turns out, for a Saturday and Sunday, so weekend worker in a retail store selling credit cards, proved in the most difficult location for them to prove that we can do it. Now let us prove all the rest of it. And that's the journey I've taken them on. Now, over the years, I've become more honed with being able to spot where those opportunities exist, but nothing's changed in terms of the process. You don't just get someone to sign a 5-year agreement. You demonstrate the value through pilots, through demonstrating you're giving them more than just filling jobs.
Yeah. So once you, sorry, James. Go on, James.
I was just trying to. I'm just curious about language and choice of language, because you said it's not about recruitment process or outsourcing RPO. It's more about managed service. What's the difference in your mind there?
Oh God, I whether it's an initialism or a acronym, I just bored by them all. Yeah, RPO, MSP, neutral vendor, master vendor, PSL. It means nothing to me. As I see it, I'm talking here about an exclusive client relationship. But a client relationship is exclusive not just from recruitment, but from a total talent solution perspective. Now, if I was going to call it something nowadays, I might call it an embedded talent model. But there's so many of these flying around the market industry at the moment. Yeah. So I'm not a big believer in badging it as an RPO. And part of the reason for that, James Joe, is that it's not got a terribly good reputation as a badge. Any recruiter that's been on the other side of an RPO knows how soulless it can be, how it's margin. And actually, a lot of clients that I know, personally very well over the years, their experience of RPO, they hate the idea of looking at it because of what they've been through with some of the biggest RPO providers out there. So I certainly wouldn't be suggesting that anybody says we do RPO now, because that's not the answer. The answer here is believing that you're going to fill every job for that client in a way that is strategically supportive, that you're going to be fair and transparent, and you're going to deliver all the added value stuff that goes into the mix.
Yeah. So as a two parts of this question, I suppose. One is there might be a few people who are running businesses, recruitment businesses, who are thinking, okay, well, maybe in their experience, or there is this perception that if you work in that kind of way, the amount of money that you make per vacancy then goes down. So thinking about from a return on investment point of view, Matt, what's the benefit of this, do you think, for a recruitment company first off, but then secondly, what's the benefit for the client?
So I hear this a lot, and I totally get it, because recruitment is quite binary as an industry, particularly when it comes to the commercials. So if you know that the market average is 15%, I don't know what it is anymore, because I haven't charged 50% for about 15, 20 years, but let's say it's 15%. Part of the reason why that pricing is structured in that way is simply because it needs to be that in order for the business to make money. Now, the business needs to make money because, don't forget, 80% of the time, recruiters aren't productive. Yeah. A lot of the time, you've got senior management who got hefty salaries. So I think if people look introspectively, they'll realize that actually these are arbitrary percentage fees that have been put out there simply to make money. Yeah. Now, the way I explain it, and it does need to be financially modeled, and we haven't got time for that now, but if you consider that 80% of the time you're unproductive, you're working an average live job of 10, average fees of say 7.5K, great, you're making 15K a month, people are happy, that's 180 grand a year, love it. But you're leaving, in my opinion, 75K a month on the table because you're not being 100% productive. Now, the way I look at it is that if you've got 10 exclusive jobs in this very simple example, that gives you predictable job flow, which allows you to work out your resource planning to fill those roles. It's predictable income. You've got the ability to manage your resource and team 100% productively. It's actually, in my experience, somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 times easier to fill exclusive work of this nature, and more cost effective, as I've just gone through before. So your profits are sky high in comparison. If I look back at the days of the average margin would be 40 to 50% margin in RPOs off a 12% fee base. That's you can't get something like that off a 15, 18% fee base simply because the maths don't work for it. So first thing I'd say is I can prove mathematically, economically, and forensically that you will make more money by having this mindset. Yeah, and by accepting it's not charging less, it's actually making more. Now, in terms of the clients, it's inevitable. Obviously, they'll look and go, well, we're going to save ourselves X amount. But you've got to remove the binary aspect from them as well, which is it's not just about the cost saving, it's all the other things we're going to do for you, which will deliver you to be a destination of choice. And I think that's the area that helps people say yes. Clients say yes because what's not to like?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So is this a growth strategy then, Matt? Do you see this as a growth? Because if a lot of our clients and the people listening today, and we attract small to medium sized businesses who talk to us and they're looking for a tech enablement solution to give them an edge. And it's interesting because one of our clients is listening in, and hello to Alex, and she just referenced that she's just won sole supplier status with a client in Europe. And obviously she's boosted both, what can I do for you in terms of building out the value proposition, not trying to use the cliche there, but also, offering them a different solution to show them how recruitment has progressed into the 21st century rather than regressed into just being a CV supply solution. So that's excellent work that you've done there, Alex. But, is this a solution, to help people grow their businesses? Because it sounds like, when you came out of the corporate world and started this, is that what helped you explode your business, or was it kept you small? Which way around?
No, so I never wanted to be big. Sorry to use the bad RPO. I wanted to have 5 to 10 clients that I could pour my heart and soul into, and that's what I had for most of the time of running my own businesses. I see this as it depends how you define growth. Now, if growth is growing, scaling through people, heads, I'm not sure this is. This is the answer, but not in the way people might think, actually. Because I see this then being a growth when it comes to people around actually the mindset change of I can have this number of people doing that job, this number of people doing that job. It may be as simple as account management and resources. Yeah, it might be a marketing function rather than asking everybody in the office to be a LinkedIn expert. They're not. They don't do it well. Yeah. It is certainly growth for me in terms of value, because there's nothing more valuable in enterprise value and equity value terms than having a long-term relationship that shows is sticky. And forget the fees there, it's about the profitability, which will be higher. Thirdly, I think from a brand perspective, it's a lot more enjoyable talking about doing a proper job. Yeah. And so that will get around, and that brings clients to your door. Now, I think about some of the clients that I've won over the years, class I'd never even heard of. Businesses in the middle of England that blow stuff up. I've never placed anybody who does that type of thing. But then we're placing 20 people a month because we gave them everything we said we would do. So it's growth of income, no doubt, growth of profitability, growth of value, and growth, I think, of mindset and people.
Okay, fair enough. All listening and sort of taking some notes there, because that's some sage advice that's Matt offered. Joe, what else should we move on to? Should we test and probe Matt?
Well, one of the questions that we did have that came in, I suppose, was again maybe a common misconception that you have to be a big recruitment firm in order to catch a big organization. So bust that myth for us, if you will.
Okay, so again, this all depends on people's parameters and definition. When we say you have to be a big client to win, so a big recruitment firm to win a big client, yeah, probably, yeah. And when we talk big, we're talking global size. And what's that old phrase that I used to hear? Nobody got fired for using Spencer Stuart in the old days of search 30 years ago. Yeah. And the same as when you're dealing with such corporate entities like the global banks, global industrial businesses, you're not going to win an RPO with them, because they will only go with the biggest. Yeah. But I'm not sure why you'd want that anyway. Margins are so tight, and it's just inevitably doomed to fail because it's soulless. I don't buy the argument that when it comes to small to medium size, even to some of the larger businesses before you get to corporate size, that anybody doesn't have the opportunity to win a relationship like this. If I go back to, even 25, 28 years ago, so when I set a business up 25 years ago, we were talking then about a business that was one of the biggest insurance companies in the UK, and I won it as one person. When I won the retail bank, won it as about 8 people, 10 people. Actually, in my experience, some of the best relationships you can aim for are the smaller businesses, because again, if you define small as being between 5 and 50 million pound turnover, they're spending a lot of money with multiple recruitment agencies. Having 5 clients like that in the bag is actually a lot better than having a large business that you can bill £1 million a year for. And I've had clients that have been £30 million a year spent through to clients that were probably about 220 a year FGP spend. I prefer the latter because it's just much more enjoyable. You're part of the fabric of that organisation.
Yeah. So where do you slot into the, or if indeed you do, but where do you slot into the ecosystem of that business if they have HR that are very much involved in the recruitment, or indeed if there's sort of talent acquisition on the scene already?
Yeah, typically you would. It's really difficult to give a binary answer, but my experience is that typically the businesses that this would be, if you're dealing with small to medium-sized recruitment businesses, the perfect client profile, my experience, will be those that will have recruitment support internally through HR, but they're not talent acquisition. If you've got a talent acquisition team, you're of a scale. But look, even then, I won't say who it is, major global resource business, 330 people in talent acquisition globally, but filling 85% of the work. So I went out and won the 15% of the work through an external service, effectively RPO again. So it is possible, but it's not something I would recommend because it's often a fool's errand. You don't get anywhere with it. But I think the perfect kind of customer profile is businesses of a size between 50 and 500 staff, recruiting between 20 and 100 a year, and who will have HR direction or management, but not a talent acquisition team. Even if they have talent acquisition, though, it'll be small. You work with them as a extension of their business, because there's only so much one person can do. It's going back to my point earlier, in a talent team of one in a client.
Okay, I think that fits in nicely with our audience, Joe, doesn't it? That sizing of where we're targeting people here at iIntro. Yeah, that like I say, where there's somewhere between 10 and 100 roles potentially available to sort of go out. So as a small firm, Matt, what actions would you recommend that a business owner should take to start this transition? And secondly, a 2-part question. How long do you think it'll take for them to sort of make a shift in their business?
Okay, so first of all, to start with data, and I would be recommending that the founders look at who they work with, where the spend has been, almost give yourself a scorecard, which is the size of the business, what I do for them, what the strength of the relationship is, where the relationship sits in terms of the buying committee of that business, what that should give you. There's a lot more to it than that, but what that should give you at least is this should appeal to them, because 1, I know I can engage with the right audience, client side. 2, it's work that we could deliver. 3, they're already spending the money elsewhere. Once you get that data, then it's about building the proposition very quickly alongside it, contemporaneously, to say, this is what we're going to do for you. And that proposition deck, it's like anything we buy as consumers all the time because things look glossy. Things say that what do you want them to hear? You're talking in a language that the client is already thinking. So let's not be hiding away from the fact, which is we don't much like doing recruitment the traditional way. We'd like to support you in this full way. So data followed by proposition development really quickly, and then I would focus on proving this concept with 2 or 3 of those businesses. Don't try and reinvent yourself overnight. Don't try and be an RPO provider by brand the day after saying I'm going to do it. Focus on taking the client on the journey to where you want them to be, for the purposes of being where you want to be. That would be my 3 key bits of advice.
I suppose for quite a lot of businesses that are listening to this, they can probably already think in their heads of maybe one or two, not all, because that's just not how it works. But, you know, in their current client portfolio, there's probably one or two that people are thinking, actually, maybe I need to start putting a strategy together of how are we going to sort of that nudge effect, how are we going to build that relationship with them over a period of time. So I wonder if you could just give us some insight. I know we don't have long, but just some insight into what would that look like if you'd already thought 2 clients in my head now that we already got some business with. What sort of things should businesses be thinking they're going to need to do with those organizations to transition?
So first thing would be make sure you're delivering some of the things you will be delivering as a full service partnership. So for instance, you know, I presume lots of people still do it, but actually most don't, which is why not send your clients every week some kind of insight, not just a talent insight report from LinkedIn, but something like, you know, this is what's happening in the marketplace. These are some of the things that we should consider. I'm listening to the market because I'm going to be your advocate. So I would start to feed some of that stuff, and I'd share with them, you know, candidates that have gone through the process, what their feedback is, how you're trying to evolve to support the clients with bringing on board staff quickly through maybe potentially some onboarding tips. There's lots of things you could do that demonstrate I'm doing a bit more than sending you a CV and having a beer with you once every month. Second thing I would then do is start to build out an understanding of what is available in the clients. So, you know, typically we look at our contacts and go, I know the FD, therefore I know there's going to be a fair bit of work. But actually, in this type of relationship, it's not just about, you know, one function. It's about all the functions. So start to map out what you need to do to drive the relationship with all of the buyers in that business. And then thirdly, you need to go into the top developments very quickly, which is I want to come and talk to you about this. I want to do it because I want to work with you in this way. I want to deliver these benefits to you. This is how I'm going to do it. This is why I'm doing it. And that gets you in the room typically 9 times out of 10. Because again, if somebody sees they're going to save money, why not? And then you've got to get into the adult mode of thinking about, I need collateral, I need case studies, I need to demonstrate the process mapping behind this. I need to make sure my terms reflect my offering. But that's not difficult to do. It really isn't.
I think there are a couple of mindset shifts, Matt, that again, you reached this point, I think, very early on, because, you know, what a lot of people see themselves as, I'm a niche provider. I provide, whether it's C-suite or mid-level management. And what this is, it's broadening your aspect. And I think that's something that people have to sort of take into account, because you either keep on, you know, chasing spot business for the rest of your life, and that can be hugely profitable. So, you know, and obviously we know a lot of people who do that very, very successfully using our platform and others, of course. But, you know, that's something that we work with. But, you know, we see the market shifting in the way that you've said, and when I say shifting, you've been doing it for 25 years. So it's not as if it's a sudden shift, but it's about opening up people's perspective to see, you know, be agnostic about the vacancy. Focus not on filling vacancies, but supporting the client in terms of their growth needs. So whether, just go back to your first example, whether it's a credit controller or a CFO or a CMO, whatever it has to be, I can help you with all of those, because recruitment, after all, is quite straightforward. So I think that's an important thing. And one of the points I want to raise whilst it's in my head, because like you, Matt, I'm a veteran, so therefore I forget things. So I don't say them quickly to be gone, and I'll have forgotten it. Oh my God, I've forgotten it already. No, the other thing I think that you raised, which is quite important, and it's something that the co-founders of iIntro, it's a view that Paul Hickey is one of the co-founders of iIntro, runs a recruitment business, and he's coming on one of our shows in the next month. So we'll try and pick up his views. This people get fixated on fees. And I think, you know, when you look at revenue and profitability, and I know we've got to focus on profitability, but, you know, I think that's somewhere where you can sort of, you know, don't get fixated on fees, because it's just it's like a vanity thing. Oh, I charge X%. Yeah, because, you know, and I think the thing that the point you made, which shows it off best, is, you listen, you can be charging the average of 15%, or you can get that piece of work at 28% or 25%. But the reality is, you're only getting paid 20% of the time. And I think it's looking at, one of the benefits of doing this is you're actually getting paid all the time. So your fee percentage could be lower because your revenue is going to be greater. Is that fair?
Yes, it is. I'm just going back to the point you made first around, there's nothing wrong with being niche. And I do think that there will still exist lots of niche businesses. So what I'm talking about today isn't for everybody, but it is for those small to medium-sized recruitment businesses that see the clients as what they're aiming for. I want to have more clients and I want to do more for those clients. That's the starting point. If you want to stay as a niche cybersecurity recruitment expert, then it's not the right thing to do. So there's nothing wrong with being niche is the first point. Second point is what this allows you to do is think about revenue generation, not just in the binary of a fee and a transaction, but in the commercial modeling of being a true partner. So, for instance, we talk about obviously we talk about retained business in search. Totally get it, yeah. But actually, what I'm talking about is retained as well, because you're paying for me to be your talent partner. You're paying for me to put the full weight of my infrastructure and time and support into you as a client. Clients are happy to pay in advance for that type of work because they bought into that partnership by that point. And that's safer money because you're not having to worry about where's it coming from. Secondly, it's costed in such a way because you're able to execute and deliver on it in a much more cost-effective way. It's just more profitable. There is a simple reality to this.
Cool. That helps. So one of the things we tease people with, sorry, Joe, one of the things we tease people with in our little trailer for this show is we put up this phrase RPO or RPP, and I think RPP comes from you because you don't, you said you don't like the acronyms. No, that's an acronym as well, but I think if we explain what it means, then people understand.
Yeah, so RPO, recruitment process outsourcing, yawn. It's soulless, really is, yeah. But because I had to badge myself with something, because we were going in for a number of quite large clients at the time, I badged as RPP, recruitment process partnership. And honestly, that P is the only important letter in that word, because A, I'm not looking to deliver just recruitment, I'm just looking to deliver a full talent solution. B, nothing's just a process, and I think it's a part of the problem. Process suggests that it's actually relatively easy to press buttons and get things moving. It's not. You don't get success by just filling the job, click a button. So part of it is the P. I should just call myself P.
Well, as a veteran, Matt, you will know that the older you get, P's are important.
They are, yeah.
Joe, we've got a question from Ali. I think it's probably worth sharing with Matt. Is it?
Yeah, it's a great question actually, and one of the things I was going to say is I suppose you've got very transactional spot business over here, and then we've got this RPP model here, and then there is still a sliding spectrum in between, isn't there? So again, whatever you want to call that, it's what works for you for a business. Now on that spectrum, of course, we've then got exclusive, so working exclusively, and then what we spend the vast majority of our time doing, which is transitioning businesses over into retainers. So Ali's actually asked a really good question. So she says, so does it make sense to charge more for contingency and then less for exclusive and retainers, which I get because your return on investment is higher. So 15% of 20% chance of filling a job is nothing compared to maybe 12% with 100% chance of filling the job.
Yes.
Catch my drift.
Yes. So was there a question there, Joe? I do apologise. I think I missed.
Yeah. So she's saying, I suppose the better the relationship you have with the client, and the better the relationship of that you have, could you charge less for it? So you charge less for exclusive and retained, I suppose, because you've got a greater chance of filling it, or do you charge more because your value proposition is higher?
No, I think this is where the industry is changing. And look, it swings in roundabouts because everything is so arbitrary. But there is a science to this, which is, and it is going to shift quite a lot. I believe that recruitment has been underserving its clients for years, decades. I include myself in that for large parts of my career. And the clients, what we should be doing is evolving like most other service sectors have evolved, which is actually, you know what, technology does have a big part to play in this. If technology does, what we're doing isn't as important as people, but you need the user in the loop to support on things like strategy, your hiring plan management, onboarding candidates, building out an employer brand. All of these things are human, and I don't think AI can take over. But in terms of the actual sourcing, it's not like it was 25 years ago. So it's almost, what am I trying to say? If I summarize it, it's about having the clients realizing that you're going to be doing what they should have already been getting. Yeah. And ultimately not charging for a luxury service now, actually charging sensibly for the service they should have already had.
Yeah, I think the way we can summarize that, it's about the productivity gain, isn't it? I mean, that's the question from Ali, really. If you're more productive, you go back to that 80-20 route. If you can switch that around, then notionally it comes back to that percentage term slower, but you're actually making more money, and the client's getting better service.
You can map it out. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
you can actually do a financial model very easy that shows it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of people, I think, that are quite curious about what you're talking about here. So, final question, I suppose, is just talk us through the type of what you actually do. What kind of support can you offer if someone wanted to reach out to you through Nest? The banner will magically appear in a second now, Matt. What could they what could they expect from you in terms of support?
Well, I don't like selling myself, Joe. Do I have to answer that? Again,
you've got 6 seconds. Go.
I help people. I care about this industry. I care about recruitment founders not being shafted, going into the wrong decisions with private equity. So if anybody just wants to pick my brain, I'm always there. What I do for other clients at the moment is I help them take their clients on that journey. Does that help? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. That's great. I think we will. There it is. So if you want to reach out to Matt, you can do that through there. Matt is brilliant. Matt is very collaborative, aren't you? And happy to have conversations with people. So do find Matt on LinkedIn as well. And I'm 100% convinced that we would love to have you back on the show. Because every single thing we've talked about is literally scratching like not even 1% the surface, I think. That's underneath.
Exactly. I think, Matt, you've shared some real great insights, and I hope your story has encouraged people to think about how they can sort of extend their process within their business and go out in there. It's not about winning lots of new clients. It's about developing the client relationships you've had. A handful of clients will keep you in business for a long, long time. So I think it's some great support.
And it really isn't that difficult. It really isn't that difficult in my experience. No worries. I've enjoyed it.
Good. Well, listen, thanks very much for joining us. Joe, we're back in a couple of weeks. Well, I say I think you're back in a couple of weeks.
Yes, it's me on my own. So we're playing Where is James Gone this week? Because James has multiple holidays and I just stay here and I do this show because I'm serious about the job. So yes, it will be me. In fact, actually, tables will be turned a couple of weeks after that. But we're going to have some more guests on. So do look out for the event going live next week on LinkedIn. So we'll be able to tell you who our guests are. But yes, for now, Matt, it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to have you on the show. Really insightful as well. And the show will be available on YouTube afterwards. So, feel free to share it. Anyone who's watched today, feel free to share it with other people who just think might help to even just start a conversation in their business,
Absolutely. So listen, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Matt. Thank you very much, Matt.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.